If you could have any superpower, what would you pick? Super speed, super strength, invisibility, invincibility? Mind reading would be cool. See, a lot of us love to entertain this question because we're under the impression that we don't have superpowers. And we also believe that if we did have superpowers, we'd use it to save the world. Well, what if you were told that everyone watching actually does have a superpower and you can use it to change the world instead of just waiting to save it? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to tell you that the secret is out. Everybody has a superpower. And for free 99, I'm going to teach you 3 skills that you need to unlock and master to be able to use your superpower to change the world. But before I get into that, I want to tell you about how I stumbled upon this fact that we all have a superpower and we can use it to change the world. It all started back in 2016. I met a man named Cameron when I was stationed at Osan Air Base, South Korea. Now, Cameron likes to be called Cam, so I'm going to call him that for the rest of the talk. But Cam was my supervisor. And there's a couple things that you need to know about Cam. So one, he's a carpenter in the United States Air Force. He's a father. He's a husband. And just like me, he's an artist. You see, over time, Cam discovered that we both had a mutual love for poetry. And one day we got in a heated discussion, which was really an argument. And Cam ended that argument by saying, "You know what? You just need to come to the open mic and see me perform my poem, and then you'll understand me better. You'll understand where I'm coming from." Now, I don't know if you guys normally win a lot of arguments, but I don't. But I tell you what, that was one hell of a way to win an argument because 1, I was confused, and 2, he challenged me and I accepted it and we stopped arguing. I guess he won that one. But that's what started changing my world because he challenged me to go watch him express himself, but he also challenged me to get on the stage as well. And that is what's going to lead us to our first skill that you need to unlock, which is caring. Now, before I go a little bit deeper into it, I want to let you know, as we go through this talk or tutorial on how to use your superpowers, I'll be assigning each of these skills to a finger so that way you won't forget, and it'll also make sense at the end. But caring will be assigned to our thumb. Now, you can remember this like giving someone a thumbs up, some affirmation, go ahead, I'm rooting for you, but caring will be assigned to our thumb, so don't forget. But why do I need to care in order to use my superpower to change the world? Well, if you're planning on changing the world, you need to know that we have to be able to affect people. And if we're going to positively affect people, what better way to do that than to be genuinely empathetic? You see, to care means to feel concern or interest. To feel concern or interest. Think about the person you care about the most, or someone that cares about you. There's an affinity to know about their well-being. You genuinely want to know what's going on in their lives. You see, when you care about someone, they feel that you have their best interest at heart and trust you because you decided to be more interested in them rather than trying to be interesting. Think about when you run to tell someone some great news, especially someone you care about. And you tell them this long, drawn-out story about how you conquered these trials and tribulations, and then you finally got to the goal that you wanted to achieve for so long, just for them to tell you that they finished that in half the time and had it twice as hard and finished out with more accolades than you. Or you ask someone about their accomplishment or their day, and they go on this long, drawn-out story, and it's so sad, and it's the worst thing in the world, and you're there, and you're being very empathetic, and you're listening, and then when it's your turn to talk, they totally ignore you. See, that's the opposite of caring. That's someone trying to be more interesting rather than be interested. And I love thinking about Cam when it comes to this, because Cam was so good at caring about me. He wasn't the first person to ever care, but I noticed how he did it. See, when Cam would come to me and help me out when it comes to poetry, he'd ask me some deeper questions to get to know me and see where I was coming from. Well, George, who do you want to be? George, what's holding you back? George, what are you passionate about? And as I dive into these answers and I get so prolific and so long about it, I noticed it. It hit me. You see, Cam wasn't asking me these questions so that I would segue to talk about him. He wasn't asking me these questions to check a box. He wasn't just doing it just to say he did it. He genuinely was interested in my interest. And an amazing thing about the way Cam cares, he cared consistently. And that actually brings us to our next skill that we need to unlock, which is time. Now, time is going to be associated with our pointer finger. So you can remember this like pointing at your watch or pointing at a clock, but a pointer finger will get time. And remember, caring is at our thumb. But why time? I understand I gotta care because I need to positively affect people. If we change the world, I gotta change people. Yeah. But what does time have to do with anything? Well, to put it short, people are obsessed with time. I guarantee you probably have a watch right now. And if you don't have a watch, you probably have a phone. And if you unlock your phone, the first thing you're gonna see, besides notifications, is the time blaring right at you with a calendar. If you look at the bottom right corner of the screen in your computer, you probably see time. It's one of the most precious things to humans. We use time for credibility and validity. Think about when you go for a job interview. The employer wants to know about your skills, but they also want to know, well, how long have you been using those set skills? Okay, doctor, before you do my open heart surgery, how long have you actually been a doctor? Before I give you this case, lawyer, how long have you actually been a lawyer? We also use time to justify moving forward in our romantic relationships. Well, we've known each other for about 3 months, so I think it's time to have kids, move in together, and get married. We also use it at the end of our relationships. Well, I feel like you don't have enough time for me. I don't have time for this anymore. You see, humans cannot control time. We have the audacity to try to manage it. We can't hold it, but we actually have the power to give it. Gary Chapman has a book called The 5 Love Languages. And in this book, one of the languages is actually quality time. You see, quality time is different than just any type of time. And I know you might be thinking, well, isn't all the time I give quality? But not necessarily. Gary likes to describe it as, okay, we're together, but am I really here? Am I really present in the moment with you? That's what quality time could look like. And I like this because I could see it when Cam and I would have our interactions. You see, when Cam was caring about me, it was quality time. There was no distractions. He didn't make me feel bad for calling him late or early. He didn't make me feel like it was transactional. I didn't feel like I owed him anything. He never asked for time back when we would spend time together. The amazing thing about the way Cam gave quality time is that he cared about me even when I wasn't around. You see, Cam was my mentor when it came to poetry. And I leaned on him a lot to become a better artist and to be a better public speaker and to be more confident in myself. So on his own time, he set it aside to come up with a plan for me to be better. And when we link up, well, he'd show me where he's been spending his time. And it was on me. You see, the key to quality time is not just having it, but to use it intentionally and actually being there. Dale Carnegie has a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And in this book, Dale talks about, well, if you're busy, you owe it to that person to kind of stop what you're doing, give them your full undivided attention to let them know that you want to hear exactly what they have to say. But you just need a couple more minutes or maybe an hour or a day or so, whatever it is, so you can hear their whole story and help them out. Or just listen to them vent. Now, I know I'm talking a lot about giving your time away. And it's very important if you want to connect to people and positively affect them. But if we're going to change the world, I'm going to need you to also take time for yourself. How do you expect to change the world if you don't spend time here? Spend time here. You see, we can't change the world if we don't take time for ourselves to worry about the things that bother us as well. And this actually leads us to our last skill that you need to unlock, which is vulnerability. Now, I know I'm talking about superpowers, and a lot of you are like, wait, vulnerability? I want to know about my powers. How do I use my powers to change the world, George? Not weaknesses. Well, actually, I didn't say weakness. I said vulnerability. And if you think about the first question I asked you, I asked, if you could have any superpower, what would you pick? And a lot of powers that I mentioned, we've seen superheroes in comics, TV shows, and movies use these powers. An amazing thing about superheroes is that most, if not all, have some type of vulnerability. And the crazy thing about that, that's what we love about them. You see, maybe it's because vulnerability makes them relatable. And actually, vulnerability makes you relatable. Now remember, we're using our superpower to change the world. And if we're going to change the world, then we need to positively affect people. And if we're going to positively affect them, then we need to care. But we also need to connect. And to connect, you need to be relatable. And one way to be relatable is to be vulnerable. So at this point, you've unlocked caring and quality time. Now together, they're the foundation to become a really great therapist. Now, therapy is definitely a great way to change the world, but it's not the superpower I'm talking about unlocking. You see, being human is the last element you need in order to use your superpower to change the world. Dr. Brené Brown is a huge advocate for vulnerability, and she says that people who wade into discomfort and vulnerability and tell the truth about their stories are the real badasses. That means if I let down my guard and I tell you my stories, I tell you my struggles, together we grow, we give, we begin to trust, we love. And you see, the superheroes that we love the most, despite their amazing feats that they have, they still have a vulnerability. And for some reason, that makes them stronger. You see, Cam was vulnerable with me all the time. What a lot of people don't know is that in Osan Air Base, South Korea, if you're stationed there, most of the times you're separated from your family, and you're there for at least a year. You see, Cam would tell me about his shortcomings. He'd tell me about the things that bother him the most, but he also tell me about the things that make him the happiest, and his aspirations. And that's because vulnerability is not only things that make you sad, but vulnerability can also be the things that make you happy. So think about your favorite place to go, your favorite pet, your favorite person, your favorite thing to do. And you go and you tell somebody about those things, and they don't really react the way that you thought they would. It kind of hurts a little bit. Now on the surface, you might be thinking, well, why does this bother me? It makes me happy. Why do I care if anybody else really likes it too? Well, because it was a vulnerability moment that you shared with them. You shared something that meant a lot to you. You see, Cam took this skill and applied this power to his poetry. This man would get on stage in front of strangers and friends and tell them about the things that bothered him the most, the mistakes that he would make. But he'd also tell them about his aspirations as well and the things that he was proud of. And he challenged me to do the same thing. And I was very apprehensive at first, but I'm telling you, the reaction was overwhelming. A room full of strangers became a room full of family in a 5-minute poem. So imagine what it'd be like if I was just vulnerable with somebody one-on-one. If we normalize what it's like to be human, you'll see how people will change the way they interact with you. You see, vulnerability is always perceived as a weakness, but I think it's something that has an even huger impact. And for that, we'll assign vulnerability to our pinky. So now, you've unlocked all 3 skills. The first one being caring, the next one being quality time, and then finally, you've unlocked vulnerability. And if you put all these skills together, you get your superpower, which is the American Sign Language of I love you. That's it. Grand finale, ladies and gentlemen. Love is how you change the world. And I know it sounds like a cheesy song, that love will change the world, but trust me, I even have an example of how it's already changing the world today and how it changed the world in the past. A lot of us know Mahatma Gandhi, known as the Great Souled One. You see, Gandhi used passive resistance to fight for Indian immigrants, Hindus, and Muslims. You see, Gandhi loved everyone. Gandhi cared about everyone. He gave them quality time. He even spent some time in jail for them. And he also was vulnerable with everyone. Okay, but did Gandhi really change the world for me? Let me keep going further. We all know who Martin Luther King Jr. is. The civil rights activist that fought for equality in the United States using passive resistance as well in peaceful protest. You see, Martin cared about everyone. You see, Martin also spent a lot of quality time. He spent most of his life serving others. He too spent some time in jail for what he believed in. And then Martin was also sharing a mutual vulnerability with all of his supporters, and he even had his own things that he was vulnerable about. Martin Luther King Jr. used love to change the world. But what does that have to do with Gandhi? Well, when Martin Luther King Jr. was alive, he was asked who inspired him. He didn't say a church member, didn't say a family member, didn't say some popular person that we've all seen on TV, other than Mahatma Gandhi. The amazing thing is that these two men never met. That means that Gandhi's love echoed around the globe for years, and it reached a man in the United States, and he too used love that he received indirectly from Gandhi. You see, love has been changing the world. It's changed the world in the past, and it's changing the world today. As a spoken word artist, I describe performing as the most vulnerable fun I can't wait to have again. I put love into each piece because my goal is to connect and affect people. And I smile about it because technically, Cam did that for me. You see, what a lot of people don't know is that when I met Cam, I was fighting depression and losing. But if Cam didn't care, give me quality time, and be vulnerable, and ultimately just showing me some love, then I probably wouldn't be here today. Because not only did love kickstart my career as a poet, but it also saved my life. Now, if you see me outside of this forum, in the street, please do not run up to me without any context and say, "George, will you love me?" Because then my wife is going to kill us both, and then I guess the world is definitely going to change for both of us. But seriously, what I love about this concept is that there's no hard science. There's no math. There's no formula, just human. Just being a person. And that's what we're all here for, right? To make the world better for ourselves, for each other, and for future generations. If we can remember to care for people, give them quality time, and reciprocate vulnerability, we will in turn show and give them love. And because of that, they will go out and change the world because of you. So now that you have these skills, remember, I love you. Now go change the world.